So I want to talk to you about my first job out of college. You know, I often wonder if there is a segment of the population who do not appreciate the grind of jobs that are taken for granted. I mean, if you're in a particular position where you're interacting with someone in a job that, I hate to say it, that you think is demeaning or beneath you or whatever the case may be, or maybe it's just a job where you're dealing with someone that you deal with on such a regular basis that you kind of don't appreciate what it is they have to go through in order to do that job, you might not appreciate what it is they have to go through to do that job. This is why I fully understand people who are reevaluating their work situations after going through the pandemic of 2020 to 2022. And so let me tell you about one such job that I often think is probably greatly unappreciated. And this was a job that I had immediately after I graduated from college. And this was a job as a telemarketer. Now, I'm going to date myself a bit because this was back in 1991 when I graduated from college. And I can tell you that shortly after I graduated from college, I was really excited about jumping forth and getting back into the workforce. Now, I'd done some odds and end jobs here and there during college, but this was my first time as a college graduate. I'm on my own. I'm going to make this thing do what it do. And so I was really excited about getting my first job. Now, I will tell you I was in a unique position because I did have a summer job lined up, and then I had military obligations in the fall. But I was in this window for about a few months where I knew I could, get a job. And this was going to be my first time where I had to interview, dressed up in a shirt and tie, and I was really pumped. And so this was the first job I applied for as an adult, straight out of college, 21 years old, going on 22, and I'm pumped up and ready, and this is my first job as a telemarketer. Now, this was a whole new adventure for me because I didn't have a clue what being a telemarketer was. And I learned very quickly that this was not necessarily a job that I thought it was going to be. So you can imagine you go and you interview and you got your shirt and your tie, you're nice and freshly clean shaven, or you looking kind of fly, and you get offered this job and you're like, oh, you think you can do this? Oh yeah, let's do it. I'm pumped. So let me tell you what the problems that I had when I was doing this. First of all, the first problem that I had was actually getting to the job. So you got to think about it like this. 22 years old, 21 going to 22, I didn't have a car. So this was my first time using mass transit to get somewhere. So I had to rely on the bus. And I learned very quickly that there was no one bus that would take me directly to the job. So that meant that whatever bus I had to get on, I had to change buses a few times. Now, for those of you who are going through that, I'm like, how did you not know? I'm like, well, I didn't know because I'd been in college for 4 years, and the summer jobs that I had a car, so getting to them wasn't a problem. This is a time where I'm on my own, and I'm staying on some temporary housing on college campus, and the job was not close at all. So here I am basically having to take a variety of different buses to get from point A to point B. And then here was the other thing that was fascinating that I didn't know. The nearest bus stop wasn't at the job. The nearest bus stop was actually a few blocks away from the job. So that meant in addition to having to, go through the grind of actually getting to the job, I had to basically factor in the fact that wherever I went, I was going to have to stop and factor in how long it was going to take me to walk from wherever I was at in terms of the bus stop to the actual job itself. So here it is. My work day starts at like 7:30 in the morning. So in order to make it, the first bus that picked me up at 6 o'clock in the morning and dropped me off at the bus stop close to my job at 7:15. So that meant, think about it for a second, I had to be at the bus stop by 6 o'clock, which typically meant that I needed to be up and moving at about 5:30, 5:15 in the morning, up, showered, shaved, and having to walk to the bus stop to be there to rock and roll. And so that when the bus got there at 6 o'clock, it would take me to where I needed to be. So here was a situation where by the time I got to the bus stop, my final at 7:15, I still had another 15 minutes to walk in order to get to where I had to work. So that's how my days started. So let's talk about the second part, getting familiar with the job itself. So the telemarketing position I had was actually a sales job. So what happens is that this company, and I can't remember the name and so forth, the customers were already existing customers. That means they had another product that they were already utilizing from the company. What this company was doing was this company wanted us to contact them to see if they would be interested in purchasing additional packages. And so as a result, what we would have to do is we would have to contact, so think of it like this. So let's say you had a Visa card and we were trying to encourage you to get an extra credit protection, which you had to pay for. And so that's what they had us doing. We were trying to sell people additional credit protections for their existing credit cards to protect them against fraud, things of that nature. And so as a result, we were evaluated based on the number of sales per day. And the system was automated. So the moment you sat down, put your headset on, then automatically you made yourself available, the system would bring up the name of the person, their address, their phone number, and any other personal and identifiable information that was necessary, and they would call them. And all I had to do was wait for them to answer the phone and then launch into it. So as a result, the nice part is that all I had to do was sit there and be prepared to talk. Now, the job itself, if you say, well, how long did it take you to learn that job? Well, actually a day. The training was 1 day, and then they put you on the floor. So this is how they did it. So what I had to do is I got introduced to what was called a script. I didn't even know this thing existed. So what it was is that I was introduced to a script which I had to follow, which enabled me to answer a variety of different responses. And as you become more fluid, you could respond to these various things quicker. Now, for those of you who are like, are you talking like a physical script? Yeah, like I had a binder that had scripted notes that literally said, if the person says, I'm not interested, it told you what to say. If the person said, this may be too expensive, they told you what to say. If the person gave you, it was like a litany it was like every scenario, it gave you the words for what you had to say. You didn't have to make it up. You didn't have to guess on the fly. You didn't have to try to pull some out your backside. It literally gave you just had to get comfortable with moving really fast through these various scripts. And all of that was taught in 1 day. And remember, the system that I was utilizing was automated. So the system would call. I had to read from the script in terms of the introductory material, and then basically listen to see whatever responses they had other than, yeah, that's great, sign me up. Now, that's it in terms of training. So now here it is, I'm having this unique issue. I'm having to get to the job, and then this funky fly thing of what it meant to actually learn how to do the job. So let's take some extra steps here and listen to the funky part. My work day was 7:30 to 4 p.m. Ideally, if you factor in a 30-minute lunch, that's 8 hours. However, I was given 30 minutes for lunch, which was unpaid. I could take 2 breaks, one 15-minute break in the morning, one 15-minute break at in the evening, and those were unpaid. So as a result, if I wanted to get 8 hours of pay, I would either have to work until about 4:30 p.m. to adjust for the unpaid breaks, or not take any breaks at all other than lunch. And I'm going to tell you, that used to blow my mind. And so I started conditioning myself, because in most instances you're supposed to be encouraged to take a break. I had the break available to me. I just wanted my full 8 hours. So I committed myself to working through the break. I said, I'll be all right. Now, remember, as I said, I only get 30 minutes for lunch. Unfortunately, this is my first job, so I didn't have a whole lot of money starting off. So I didn't really have the ability to bring my lunch with me. So what I would do is there was I think it was either Rally's or a Checkers. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's a fast food place. It's like a McDonald's or Burger King. And food was right across the street. And that was the nearest place. But across the street was an extremely busy intersection. So I had to basically navigate going across that street, and by the time I crossed the street, stood in line, put my order in, and got my order, and then walked back across the street, 20 minutes had passed. So by the time, which meant I basically had to rush through my food. And a lot of times I started getting into the practice of, as I got my food, I would be eating it as I was walking across the street. So by the time I got back, I had about 10 minutes left. I would either be munching on some fries or just basically drinking a Coke. And as such, as a result, I had to do it like that every day in order to condition myself to be able to get through my 30 minutes and be back on the clock. So let's talk a little bit about that clock. When I was working, the automated system was set up so that you had to sign in when you got in the morning, you had to sign out for every 15-minute break, and you had to sign out for lunch. So that meant if you weren't on the clock, you weren't getting paid. So I got conditioned to what that meant, to be very cognizant of my time. So when you logged into your computer, there was a timer running. That was the thing that blew my mind. So there was a timer that did two things. There was one timer that tracked how much time you actually were on the computer doing work, and another timer that clocked how long it took you to respond to individual automated calls to customers. Because remember, I'm getting evaluated by the number of sales calls. So they're looking at every little thing. They're looking at how long it takes me to get somebody on and off. How long am I going through the script? How many people am I able to process? And each one they're looking at in terms of getting feedback or understanding of how long it's taking me to do the things that I need to do. Now, this is even more funny because going to the bathroom was also a very unique environment or adventure. Because remember, if you're not sitting at your computer on the clock with the headset on waiting for a customer, you can't bill for that time. I mean, you can't account for that time. So if I had to go to use the bathroom, I had to come off the clock, go to the bathroom, and then get back on the clock. So you see how, again, so now I have to be mindful of the two 15-minute breaks, and if I have to use the bathroom. And let me be clear about this. I had gotten to the point where because I was so aware that any time off the clock meant money that I would not be making, or that would be longer time for me to stay if I was trying to make it up at the end of the day, I didn't drink hardly any water. I tried my best to, if I did do a 15-minute break like they gave us, I made a point to only use, that 15-minute break would always be 5. I would go, use the bathroom, and come right back on the clock because I wanted every time that was possible. And so that was the wildest thing for me. Now, here's the other part, and here's the final thing that was even more cray. Unfortunately, at the end of the workday, because my day didn't necessarily coincide with the bus schedule, I'd have to go outside and wait a half an hour for the bus to come and pick me up, and then another hour and a half to get back to where I was staying. So think about it like this. I'm off the clock at 4:30. I gotta basically walk. I'm trying now, remember, it was 7:30 to 4, but then I'm trying to make up the time, which means I'm not leaving till 4:30. I'm having to walk to the bus station, which is bus stop, which is 4:45, and then the next bus that's going to take me on the rotation of buses is 5, which means I don't get off the bus and then walk back to my place, and I don't walk back in the door until 6:30. So literally, my workday is 6 o'clock in the morning to 6. I'm the door to door, 6 o'clock in the morning. 6:30 in the evening. And I got a true appreciation of what it meant for people who are managing their time. But I want to make a point of really clear, because I don't want to cast shade on anyone who does this for a living for a long period of time, because I truly appreciate what they have to go through. But I can tell you, as a 21, 22-year-old kid right out of college, that job that I did lasted 3 weeks. Now, I learned a lot about time management. You really have to work to get 8 hours. So even though I was scheduled to work from 7:30 to 4, there were often times that the number of hours that I was working was a little shy of 8 hours, because they would not pay you for going to lunch, as I mentioned. You didn't get paid for breaks. You didn't get paid for going to the bathroom. So you had to make up that time. And that was an eye-opener for me. And I also learned very early on that sometimes it's easy to see someone doing a job and not necessarily understanding all the little things that they have to do in order to get to that job or make that job a reality. You have to stop and think about this for a second. In theory, in order for me to pull off an 8-hour workday, I literally had to have a 13-hour day because I would have to wake up at 5:30 to be able to get to the stop by 6. And then I'd get off the bus at 6:15 in the p.m. to walk through the door at 6:30. So I'm literally in order to get 8 hours in of actual paid work, I had to factor in another 5 hours to make all that a reality. I'll tell you, it was a really unique adventure to know that I was on the call. I was also on calls that was being monitored by a supervisor. Remember, when I'm on the phone with a headset, it's not just me by myself. I have somebody who is listening to what I'm saying. Am I following the script? Am I deviating from the script? Am I adjusting and moving in accordance to what the script dictates? Am I keeping my voice at a particular level? Am I presenting myself a certain way? They're evaluating all that in real time. So imagine how that could actually have you being taken aback to say, okay, I know how to talk, but why are they covering me in such a manner? Because guess what? They're evaluating everything you need to do, everything. And you have to think about it like this. It was wild for me because they were evaluating my abilities to successfully sell products in the face of people who may not even wanted to be bothered, who may not have even wanted to buy anything, or in some instances were mean, belligerent, because they didn't want anybody wasting their time. And this is a job where they have already calculated how long they expect you, even with the most difficult customer, how long it should take you to get on and off the phone call, even if you don't have a successful call. So, I'd be on the phone for 10 minutes just to get a successful outcome, and then they would tell me, okay, you did it in 10, we need you to get that down to 8. And you're thinking, okay, but instead of getting accolades for that 10, for at least getting the outcome, they're like, no, we want you to get more because the longer it takes you, the fewer successful calls you have, so we need you to cut that time in half. I cannot tell you how many times that I used to look forward to getting a voicemail or somebody's answering machine popping up saying the person's not available, because the system would recognize when a voicemail or answer machine comes on, it would literally hang it up, give you a brief 20 to 30 second cue, and then call the next person. That was my savior. Thank you very much. And usually because that was my opportunity to get up, pause, and run to the bathroom for about 1 minute and 10 seconds to come back in it before I got back in the queue again. Now, let me tell you, I always laugh when I think about this job because I wasn't the only one who did it. It was 3 of us, me and my 2 buddies. We all applied for this job, and we had all just graduated from college. We all were looking for our first job. We all got hired at the same time, and I have to laugh. My 2 buddies, I talked about me lasting 3 weeks. They lasted 1 week. They made it very clear that this was not the job that they intended to go to college for and get their degree in. And I'll admit, we were all struggling because we were all coming out of college with no major jobs in front of us. And so we all had debt, and we were looking to get started in our work lives. And I have a lot of respect for my buddies because they recognized very early on that this job was not the one for them. However, I chose to stick it out for a while. But sticking it out was only like 2 more weeks. By the time the 3rd week came around, I realized this job was not for me. Now, I share this story with you because I want you to know that I applaud all the people who are doing these jobs, and this is how they support themselves. This is how they support their livelihood. And even at the job when I was there were quite a few people I ran across that I recognized that this was their job. This was not a job they could do for a few weeks and quit and do something else. This was how they were taking care of their families. This is how they were living and surviving. But I realized early on that this was not something I wanted to do. And I had just gotten a degree in biology, and this was in no way, shape, or form in the science arena. But what I realized really early is that for some people, and at least in their situation, this was one of the only few options they had available to them. They may not have had the ability to walk away as easily as I and my friends did. And I will tell you, I got a true appreciation of what it means to be prepared to do this type of work. So now when I'm looking at people in the great pandemic and people are like, why aren't people wanting to rush back to their job now that we can do it safely? I'm like, do you realize what I just said? In order to have an employer pay me for 8 hours worth of work, I had to factor in a half an hour getting to a place early, another 3 hours riding a bus back and forth, and factor in not going to the bathroom, factor in cutting my lunch break in half, factor in not taking breaks so that I could get the full 8 hours because they were nickeling and diming me away from that. So why would anyone want to go back to a scenario where that is the working condition or that is the culture that is available to them? Now, there are going to be people who say, well, you could have got your job closer. I was like, yeah, you're completely right. I could have. But it still did not underscore the fact that just as easy as I could have gotten a job closer, the job could have done something to adjust for the fact that I was making all these changes or putting myself through all these changes to get to the job. They could have said, you take your full break. We're going to pay for your break because you're entitled to have one. They could have said, okay, when you go out on lunch and so forth, we got you. Just make sure that you're off the clock. We'll pay for you while you're on the clock so that you can go and eat. But this employer didn't do that. Now, mind you, that was over 30 years ago. So I'd like to believe employers have improved a lot since then. But keep in mind, I was making those concessions. So my work day was not 7:30 to 4. My work day was 5:30 to 6:30. That's what my door-to-door looked like. Because I know I say 5:30. I didn't get up at 5:30. I got up at 5:15. I was out the door at 5:30, so I could walk to my 15 minutes to get to the bus stop by 5:45, so I could be there in the off chance the bus got there early. Because there was a couple times that it actually got there 4 or 5 minutes early, and I didn't want to be freaked out. So I say that to say there are a lot of people, and this is one of the things that I found that the pandemic really brought to light. There are a lot of people who made a lot of sacrifices in order to do the work that they've done. And when the pandemic happened, a lot of people had to reevaluate very quickly, how much do you want to spend giving your life away to a job that's basically just going to replace you with someone else when you can't do it anymore? Those 5 hours that I was allocating just to get an extra 8 hours of pay, I'll never get back. I'll never get back that time I was sitting on the bus. I'll never get that back the time I had to get up extra early, basically 2.5 hours early just so I could get to that job. And everyone who is in the same situation like this, no one's going to give them that time. No one's paying them to wake up early. No one's paying them to sit on that bus. No one's paying them to ride that bus or that train or that subway or that carpool. No one. But they're doing that in order to be able to do the day in, day out grind of the job that they have. And I'll tell you, a lot of people don't realize that the job they're doing is not meant for them. So for those people who learned early on that the job you're doing is not meant for you, there is no shame in walking away from it. But if you're interacting with people who are doing these jobs or these types of jobs that you yourself know that you would never want to do or want to be in a position to do, just respect the fact that they are doing this job and show a little empathy to the reality that they had to do a lot of things to get the job, and they're doing this job because it's necessary, not necessarily because they want to do it.